Okay, welcome back to the third recording where I unpack the assessment tasks for edfgc5809, Teacher's Professional. And in this clip I'm going to be talking about your third assessment task, which is your teaching philosophy statement and the professional portfolio, which is why you get the big 3 right now. So what it is, and I'll break these up in 2 parts if you like. This is worth 40% of your marks for this course. So it's, as a single assessment, it's your biggest, but it's also the last, and the other ones contribute in a way to it. The first part in 3A, you're going to put forward a teaching statement. Essentially what it is actually you applying for a job, even though you're not actually going to apply for this job. It's very much like you would when you do apply for jobs a little later. So the first part is a teaching philosophy or a positioning statement around your practice. You're then going to, you also have to include an advertisement that you would have collected and downloaded. I would suggest that you do that before you even go on placement, and that way you can collect evidence that you then cover in this assessment when you're out on placement. It just makes it more real and connected. You're also going to put forward a cover letter and a CV in response to the advertisement that you have put in, as well as a response to 2 key selection criteria. So to start off with then, the personal teaching positioning statement, which just rolls off the tongue. What it actually is your teaching philosophy. So it's a statement of your beliefs as a teacher, and you're demonstrating an awareness of a range of professional issues that are relevant to your teaching philosophy. Now, your teaching philosophy is not going to change particularly when you apply for different positions, but there might be certain things that you really emphasize in it depending on a job that is being advertised. So for a pass, it's a sufficient response that demonstrates awareness of some relevant excuse me, professional issues for teachers, and that you articulate what you actually believe excuse me, what you believe are central parts of teaching. For a credit, it's well-rounded and well-articulated, and you're showing awareness, clear awareness. And at a distinction, it's concise, it's really well-articulated, and you're showing some thoughtful consideration to the relevant professional issues as you lay claim, if you like, to your teaching philosophy. And again, at a high distinction, more explicit and perceptive. I haven't put a rubric description up for you selecting an advertised position and including it, because it's really a cut and paste exercise. However, the second part is your cover letter and your CV, and as you can see, they're fairly similar in the way the marks have been distributed for this assessment. So you're going to write a cover letter in response to that particular advertisement, and it needs to reflect, because obviously you're going to tailor your cover letter to really gain the interest of the school. You're mindful of your audience, and you're also including a CV, again tailored to that particular audience. So you're not going to include jobs in your CV or resume that aren't applicable in a teaching context. So for a pass level, you're including a cover letter and a CV that addresses the criteria, or rather that is clearly related to that particular position that's going. You're connecting with the school's philosophy, but you might not be so detailed in it. At a credit, there's some clear insight that indicate that this letter has been specifically developed with this school and this job in mind. Distinction, you're accurate and you're showing some thoughtful consideration of the school and its philosophy, its context. And again, at a high distinction, very perceptive, you're probably quite innovative, and you're really grabbing that school's attention. Obviously it's not the school marking your cover letter. I am, but it needs to be very, very clear connection. The last part is you responding to 2 selection criteria. Now, it doesn't have to be the first 2 in the advertised position. Sometimes you have to download the selection criteria separately if it's a job that's being advertised online. So that, just be mindful of that. So obviously you need to include a description of that selection criteria so you can show that you're supporting your claim. And you're not just saying that you've done something, you need to support it with evidence. And that is why I've suggested that you actually identify an advertised position before you go out on placement so that you can use your time on placement to generate some of this evidence, because then you will know what the key selection criteria is, and therefore you'll be able to actually generate some good evidence. Now, you're not going to include work samples or photos and that sort of stuff, but you're going to relate it to a specific context as you're making your claim, and you're going to be quite specific in respect to how you're structuring that claim. This is something we will be talking about in more detail in respect to using the STAR approach, which is the situation, the task, action and the result. But it certainly is a good approach to use as you're putting forward your claims. So for a pass level, your response addresses the 2 selection criteria. You're putting forward some support for your claims with some evidence. Might not be particularly well explained how that evidence supports your claim, but there is something there. At a credit level, you've addressed the criteria with some detail, and there's a connection. Might be slightly discrete and not particularly well integrated, but there are links, even they might be a bit clunky, to how you support your claims in respect to evidence. For a distinction, your response is accurate and detailed, and your claims are thoughtfully supported with evidence. So you're really articulating that very effectively. Again, at a high distinction level, very useful in its detail, really succinct and perceptive. The second part, or 3B, is a summary for your portfolio. It's not a whole portfolio, but it's a little snapshot, if you like. And it requires you to summarize your portfolio, how you're building and developing your professional portfolio ready for your interviews, both in respect to getting registered as a teacher as well as when you apply for jobs. So you're not going to submit the actual artifacts, but in the summary, an electronic summary of what you're including. And it's really important that these artifacts are accompanied with a rationale explaining what this actually demonstrates and why you've chosen it. So that rationale should articulate very clearly why you've chosen this artifact, how it relates to your identity as a teacher or your role as a teacher, and how it connects with the EDSOL graduate standards, so that because it's going to fit into that framework. You can be quite creative. You might even do little video clips in respect to you providing this summary. It should be roughly 600 words. So what it should be is organised. It should be clearly organised as an e-portfolio. Again, not the whole thing, but with snippets. So it needs to be fairly comprehensive, though, not just randomly selected things. It needs to be effectively chosen, an effectively chosen selection of artifacts, clear rationales and effective rationales explaining what these artifacts do there, if you like. And I would suggest that you look at the EDSOL standards, the illustration of practice, which give you quite a nice example of what a rationale and kind of a contextual blurb, if you like, might look like, which also gives you explicit links to the EDSOL standards. EDSOL being the Australian Institute of Teaching and School Leadership. So, at a pass level, you include all of the following. You've got a selection of artifacts, at least 3. There is a rationale there, and there are some links to the EDSOL standards. At a credit, it's organised well. It is a representative and an effective selection. And there is some detail explaining that in your rationale, clear links to 8-sol, and again at a higher level for a distinction and a high distinction, and you can read that by yourself. Fairly straightforward, but as I've said before, if you've got any questions, please put your question up on the discussion forum, because if you're wondering something, odds on someone else is wondering the same thing. You will submit your electronic portfolio through Moodle, and that's the same with all your assessment tasks. You submit through Moodle. Thank you.